Welcome to my cellar. This particular episode is a little strange for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm doing it in the middle of the afternoon in an empty house, hoping nobody comes while I'm doing this because I had audio issues last night. And two, I noted that this is my 250th Curmudgeon in the cellar. My God. And then if you look, this is the 250th numbered one. I did several of them before I started numbering them, and Jesus, it's a lot of babbling on my part. But hey, as long as I keep getting interesting topics and fun questions, I'll babble on. 5? No, I don't pun. Well, I just did. Okay. Anyway, number 250. I wish I had a band and and a bunch of dancers and some kind of big production, but I don't. Oh, in the background there you can see my pachinko machine. I've got it up and cleaned and working again, except for one tulip. Tulip on the bottom jams up. Okay. What is? Okay, all right. Well, this is an interesting story. Now I'll share it with you because it made me feel good. Just want to say how much D&D meant to me growing up. I started playing in '79, but in '78, my friend and I heard about this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. We had no idea what it was all about, but for the fact that there were monsters to face in mazes of dungeons. We let our imaginations fly when my friend and I got together and speculated what D&D was all about. As I came from an artist family, I started drawing the monsters, and my friend, no, I don't use names, drew the dungeons on grid paper. We started playing the game without any rules. Gary always said you didn't need any. Later in '79, during the summer, I found out about a game store that carried D&D, and my mom took me down to the shop. The game store is long gone, but I remember the owner taking me aside and bringing out all the rule books. He asked my mom if we had some time, as he would explain how the game worked. Excuse me. My mom smiled at me and said she would leave us while she did some errands. I was so excited about what was happening as he sat down and began to explain the rules. A whole world opened up for me, and when my mom came back, she bought me the rules and dice. D&D got me through high school and college, and I made some good friends over the years. I think the most important thing for me looking back is how the game freed me to make decisions about my own life. Thank you, Tim, and I'm sure the game will be here for a very long time. It's already gone through many storms and will go through many more in the future. I'm definitely... Oh, and this man says that I'm going to definitely design you a coin. And seeing as how he's a metal artist, it'll be made in bronze. Well, if you're listening, it's got to be fast for me to get any cast up to get to GaryCon. GaryCon is 3 weeks, 4 weeks away. Anyway, thank you. And it's a great story about the world opening up. The world opening up for these two young guys. And what a great world to be in. Now, here's a response to the proposal, the last one, about setting up a Mexican standoff. Yes, as a GM, some days it's hard enough to stop the players from pitting themselves against each other and creating unwinnable situations. They don't usually need any my help with that. Well, yeah. I know. It all depends on the philosophy prevailing that week or that month in your group. Are we murder hobos, or are we daring do laden people out doing amazing things and getting wealthy in the meantime? Because after all, we are. We don't pass up the loot. Hi, Tim. Been playing since the early 90s with friends in middle school. Really good legends like you. Oh, really glad legends like you are still around. Legends. Thank you. Yeah. And putting out content. Yeah, I am still doing a little of that. In fact, at GaryCon, 2 products that I have a hand in will be there. Curse of the Weaver Queen is going to be there from Old Guard Games. Yay, finally. And D20 Delving from Wizard Tower is going to be there. And I'm going to be doing signings on the Weaver Queen. Jared asked me to, and I said, okay. I don't know. If you get a Delving and you track me down, I won't be there Sunday, but any other time you track me down, I'll sure. Or just listen to it and have fun. Would be awesome to see you at GaryCon this year if you'll be there. Yeah, I'm going to be there, you betcha. Can't believe it's the 15th one. I've been to all 15. Well, I did the virtual thing on the virtual GaryCon, but I've run games at every one way or another. And now we're talking about the different weapon stats and if you remember, I was talking about how everything was a D6. Variation in weapon stats in some way is necessary, in my opinion, unless your rules are very abstract, like FATE. F-A-T-E, all periods. It's an acronym, I guess. I'm not familiar with the rules. I'm sure I'm in the minority, but I prefer weapon versus armor class tables modifiers to variable damage. Makes different weapons have situational advantages rather than one weapon type being objectively the best. Combining variable damage and versus armor class mods adds even more depth and makes things that's much more complicated. Your mileage may vary. Now, I'm okay for that. I really enjoy getting down into the nitty-gritty of weapons and their capabilities. And, for instance, I have no problem with giving somebody a sax that'll do D8 worth of damage, or even 2D4, because that's a big damn wicked knife. And if you get a good hit, you can do a lot of damage with a knife. Not a dagger, but it is a knife. Small hand weapon. I like it. You're right. In my opinion, good boiled armor is the next best thing to chainmail. And it's a lot lighter. Every armor has its weaknesses. Every armor has its strength. Certain weapons. We used to carry more than one weapon. You had your favorite weapon, okay, sword, axe, whatever. Or in the case, sword guys, or that would often carry an axe. And some, people that favored an axe and carried an axe as their primary weapon might carry two. And axes, for instance, as a secondary weapon, were damn handy for chopping your way into things. And we didn't get into, that's your axe, you're not quite as proficient with that. Nah, we didn't get into that. I still don't. Okay, this next one. Question. Taverns and tussles, or these cliche. Beginnings have cliche ends. An oft-lamented setting in a campaign is a humble tavern from which PCs may never even exit in search of a rumored location due to the distraction of brawling with anyone that looks at them wrong. Now you're now you got the Knights of the Dinner Table right there, man. Did you ever run into this problem, or was there time between Dungeon Temple tombs just glossed over? I went for the gloss over. Unless I can going to some establishment part of the story behind the adventure. Otherwise, never glossed over. We kept in Lake Geneva, and there was a generalized calendar that kind of ran nonstop. And so most of the campaigns ran at roughly the same speed. And so with healing and stuff like that, which I no longer pay much attention to, with healing and that, we knew, okay, where are we in time, TSR time, game time, and okay, who's healthy at this point in time, as well as who's healthy and close enough to partake. No, so I've not dealt with that problem, but I've heard many stories about it, and there, if the DM wants to feed them experience points, he can just keep sending brawlers and bullies in for them to beat up, and they never have to leave the tavern. But now that becomes a board game. Beating bums at the bar. My first printing copy of the 5e Player's Handbook, bought in 2014, had its binding falling apart in 2019. So I emailed WotC customer services and told them, after a couple of emails with photos of the print number and a short summary of how bad the problem was, a brand new copy was couriered all the way to Scotland for me for free. Okay. WotC did the right thing. Let's face it, WotC needs all the goodwill it can get from its players just now. The worst they can say is no, and all it'll cost you is a couple of emails. Good point. Wouldn't it be funny, in a funny sort of way, if all of a sudden WotC were inundated with emails about the raggedy-ass condition of their books? So if you got a raggedy-ass book, like the writer says, all you can lose is a couple of emails. And they did the right thing in his case. I've gained the impression over the years watching your channel that you're not greatly in favor of granting magical items to your players. Is that a fair analysis? I think magic can become too dominant, and so I'm stingy. I've also been burned a bunch of times, and learned that, and usually I've been burned by clever thinking, and then decided, well, okay, that isn't going to happen again. I used to run adventures back when I was TPKing regularly, with characters that were much more tricked out, and some of them had magical items. And one time my character had a ring of animal control, animal control, and he could speak with animals. And so one of the things he brought with him before, on the adventure was a bag of mice. And so he would compel them to go in all the rooms ahead of him and then come back and tell him. And I said, nah, I may not be PETA, but nah, not again. So, clever ploy. Magic ought to be really, really, really special. And we're going to continue that theme in some of the comments coming. How do you view magic items in terms of fantasy role-playing gameplay? What do you think they add, subtract to play? Well, I think in one way they add because they create an interest. And it's been my experience that adventurers will go to greater lengths to acquire some magic, especially a repeater, something that works a long time or forever, than they will over a pile of loot. Unless, of course, it's gems or pearls, which are easily transportable. It's just been my experience. So magic items, relatively scarce, relatively rare, I think are a good thing. I really think they are. I think they can be. I think you got to be very careful when you put them into your campaigns, because your players are going to think outside the box and find ways to exploit whatever they have, or try ways, and that's good. But you don't have to let everything they try work. From the same individual. Ubiquitous magic items. I suspect that a problem with magic items in FRPGs is that they tend to overpower or give unreasonable advantage to certain PCs, classes, whatever. What if everyone had easy access to magic, from the crappiest kobold to the world's smelliest beggar? What effect would that have in play? it'd ruin it. Magic is special because it's rare, not just because of what it does. Magic has to be rare. High magic. Now, charm spells on a lamp, you put a charm on a lamp and stuff like. Okay, low magic, I don't care. In fact, you can build a fun setting with low magic. But high magic, deeply enchanted weapons, armor, items, apparel, wands, staffs, staves, those are in a different category. In my world, in the way I like to play. If everybody had magic, you wouldn't have to give everybody magic, just give them all 3 more points on all their attributes, and +3 on all their die rolls. And now they're all magic. In my opinion, that would be the effect it would have. Low magic can be mundane, can be a lot of fun. But the higher magics should be, in my opinion, very rare and few and far between. All right, now we have another one. On the subject of low quality, Hasbro released action figures of the 1980s D&D cartoon, which are so low of quality that the hands and feet break off, and the reviews say the box art is the best part. Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? Can you do a little better, Hasbro? Come on. Just crank it out, and the suckers will buy it, right? Well, we're tired of eating Nightcrawlers now. We're ready for something better. All right, I'm going to read you a very interesting synopsis. And I took this off a website of a bunch of people in Okinawa to play D&D, of whom I know many of them. I'm not sure if I know this individual. And anyway, this is his take, and I thought it was brilliant, a synopsis on the difference between game styles, old school and current. So bear with me, and I'll try to do my best dramatic reading here for you so as not to bore you half to tears. Let me clear my throat, water my tonsils. Well, actually, that's a lie. I don't have any tonsils. After now having played in more OSR games than I'd like to admit, I would add 2 things from my humble experiences. Number 1, the nuance is different. I'll use checks as an example. Say the party enters an abandoned guard tower, and in a lower level room there's a visible trapdoor in the floor. In 5e context, my experience is players may want to do a perception check for traps or to see if locked, and maybe a detect magic spell by the spellcaster. So if they roll successfully and detect traps and or determine if it's locked and or magic around, they will attempt to disarm the traps, unlock the door, dispel magic with dice rolls and spell. If they are successful in dice rolls, then cool. They go ahead and open the door because worst case scenario, they weigh the strength and size of the party members versus what might be on the other side and figure they're strong enough to fight and defeat them. Maybe not, but they got a chance. By contrast, in OSR games, there's a literal, palpable fear in the character and player room. Players have to describe exactly what the character is doing, and the DM may call for a roll. In the same situation above, the OSR character says, I'll stop 10 feet from the trapdoor and listen for about 3 minutes to see if I hear anything. DM says, you do not. No roll. The character then says, I take my hand out of my gloves and place it on the floor and feel for vibrations. DM says, no, you do not feel any vibrations. No roll. But as your bare hand is out, you feel that the floor is considerably and unnaturally colder than the air. No roll. But as your bare hand is out, you feel that the floor is considerably unnaturally colder than the air. No roll. At this point, the party backs outside of the guardhouse so as not to be heard by whatever may be below the floor, and goes into deep discussion as to what could be the cause of freezing temperatures and whether the group is strong enough to put up a fight. It's decided if the creature behind the trapdoor is most likely a vampire or other form of undead, and despite being a party of 5, not everyone is likely to survive a toe-to-toe fight with something that can chill the floor in a 10-foot radius around the trapdoor. Our strongest character had 8 hit points, so it was decided that the stealthiest of the party would slowly and quietly go back and thread some rope through the handle on the trapdoor and throw the other end out the window. Go back outside, and the party will, en masse, yank the door open from outside with the possible safety of sunlight, thereby giving them a chance to run if it comes out looks too strong, or forcing it to fight in the light of day if undead. The DM finally called for a roll on the thief ability to sneak back in and thread the trap, throw and get back out without any undue noise. As the magic user only had 1 spell per day, we decided not to waste it on detect magic, because we might have needed it in the fight to come. Rope pullers, spotters, and strategic strikers carefully detailed their positions. The rope was yanked, the trapdoor opened, and the whole tower floor filled with frost and mist coming from the floor opening, and a voice speaking a dead language from over 1,000 years ago came forth along with a presence. It was an ancient vampire, we think. We never saw it, but hints. A single strike would have been strong enough to kill any of us. But we ended up getting information, talking from outside in the sun, and it was apparently trapped inside the building. But it could smell us and said it would find us no matter where we went. We ran. All of that to say, you could achieve the same level of nuance in 5e, but in my experience it doesn't happen. Also in 5e, the DM wouldn't throw level 2 characters against a full vampire without adequate warning, and the characters could get away with a barbarian yelling Leroy Jenkins. I don't understand that one myself, and apparently some of the commenters didn't either. In OSR games, anything can be behind any door, so you gotta play accordingly. Lastly, in the 5e scenario, the characters working together may actually have a chance of surviving with magic and heroic teamwork and dice rolls. In the OSR game, it would have been a TPK. We only felt the cold because our one character specifically made a plan to take off his gloves and feel the floor, not a dice roll or perception check, which led to the whole plan of attack and our survival. In OSR games, by default, it is assumed that we aren't going to win shit, so we are forced to find a whole new way of dealing with encounters, or setting the stage in our favor so that we can have a chance. Number 2, I noticed quite a difference in retro clones that try to recreate the feel of original D&D, such as OSE Essentials, and old-school Renaissance games that use old rules as a construct, but push the boundaries on the beauty, quirkiness, gonzoism, gore, and philosophical aspects of the gaming experience. Veins of the Earth, Into the Odd, Morkborg, Mothership, Troika being a few prime examples of games that are decidedly not trying to recreate original D&D, yet using the same rule set. I've actually seen quite a lot of clashes with OSR Revival folks and OR Renaissance folks. That's a very interesting synopsis. I think the nuance of the synopsis about nuance is brilliant. And this old school revival and old school Renaissance, I have no idea what camp I'm in, if I'm even in a camp. I didn't think it needed to be revived, and my jury is still out on whether or not it needed a renaissance. I'm old school university. I'm still in the same grove of trees, sitting on the same marble benches, listening to the birds, watching the bugs, and doing it the old way. Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.